This is Krat. The gilded city of invention has fallen to ruin. Once a mecca of automated technology, Krat is blanketed in disaster, beset by the virulent petrification disease and ravaged by the very puppets that built its splendor. It's a rotting husk whose treasures lie open for carrion and scavengers to pick clean. In this chaos, a unique puppet of master inventor Giuseppe Geppetto awakens. It must, with the help of a handful of Krat survivors, save the city from frenzied puppets, uncover the truth of the petrification disease, and put an end to evil plots before all is lost. But the puppet's tale begins at the climax of the greater story. How did Krat find itself in such a powerless state, and whose interests are involved? Before we can answer such questions, it's critical to lay the foundation for Lies of P's rich lore. Fictional Krat takes much inspiration from real-world sources in history. First is its homage to the tale of Pinocchio, a serial fantasy by Carlo Collodi, published in the late 1800s that tells of the childish mischief of a wooden marionette puppet brought to life by an impoverished woodcarver named Geppetto. Though mostly remembered as a puppet whose nose grew when he lied, Pinocchio suffered many mishaps, both jolly and frightening, that taught him of wisdom and kindness, ultimately leading to his transformation to real boyhood. Lies of P weaves its own fascinating narrative, but never forgets its source. From Geppetto to Polendina to Fuoco, most of the game's characters are references to those found in Pinocchio. Sophia, the blue butterfly, is a parallel to the blue fairy. The stalkers such as Red Fox, Black Cat, and Mad Donkey represent the animal characters that Pinocchio crosses paths with on his adventures. The Easter eggs are too many to count, but they're there for those with an eye, and they shape the game's lore. Lies of P tackles themes similar to Collodi's. At first naive, self-centered, and mischievous, Pinocchio ultimately learns the significance of virtue. Through morality, he's made into a human. The question of ethics manifests most strikingly through the game's lie mechanic. The overriding programs within puppet circuitry prevent them from telling anything other than the truth, which makes Geppetto's puppet special. It's the only one that can deceive, and its decisions to lie or remain honest greatly impact the story's course. This ties into another strong theme. Pinocchio and his journey are symbolic of the human condition, the essence of our experience. When artificial intelligence and technology mirror so perfectly the natural, Lies of P asks us what truly makes one human. As Geppetto's puppet lies, its internal springs begin reacting, its ego awakens, and it dissolves the line between man and machine. Krat as a setting is suffused with the mystical and metaphysical. Celestial and temporal power are real forces, though not well understood. These systems are drawn from real-world ancient beliefs and traditions, such as Hermeticism and Gnosticism, and the proto-science of alchemy. Hermeticism is a loose philosophical and religious tradition founded in the Greco-Egyptian world of antiquity. Its principles are based off the teachings of a mythical prophet of wisdom named Hermes Trismegistus, or Hermes the Thrice Great. Some believe he was so named because he mastered all three aspects of universal knowledge: alchemy, which deals in workings of sun and earth, astrology, or the workings of the stars and cosmos, and theurgy, the working of gods. A cosmic order to the universe exists within Hermeticism. There's a supreme deity, known as the One or the All, that is both transcendent and immanent, meaning it's the creator of all things and is present in all things. Man was originally created immortal, but fell from his seat in the eternal to dwell in exile on the material plane. Humans are thus made of a material body and an immaterial soul. The purpose of Hermeticism is to return to God in the spiritual plane. This is achieved through gnosis, or revelation of true wisdom, through transmutation of the soul, and through the casting aside of material possessions. Gnosticism, an early branch of Christian sects, shares many ideas with Hermeticism, such as the divine spark of the soul being trapped within a material body, the importance of gnosis in finding true enlightenment and returning to spiritual existence. Gnosticism is far more extreme, however, in how it views the material world and humanity's interaction with it. Material existence is seen as evil. It's the creation of a blind, lesser god known as the demiurge. All is illusion and deceit, and must be rejected. In both, an emphasis is placed on the tempering of the human soul. Enlightenment leads to transcendence and return to the One. Both these teachings are significant in alchemy and transmutation, ideas paramount in Lies of P. Alchemy is an ancient and esoteric practice that evades direct definition. Established in various corners of the globe over 4,000 years ago, alchemical principles center around the transmutation, purification, and perfection of physical substances, chiefly alchemical metals, with a parallel focus on the purification and perfection of the soul. It's at once a proto-science, a philosophy, and a religion. Alchemy's fundamental task was to follow the magnum opus, the great work, which would create the perfect human body and soul, as well as the mythical Philosopher's Stone, an object that transforms base metals into noble counterparts. For example, iron into gold, and also creates the elixir of life. The elixir of life, the fountain of youth, immortality, and eternity, desire central to alchemy and many other esoteric practices. This desire materialized in the Taoist alchemists of China. Through distillation of substances, through aligning the spiritual with the natural, practitioners sought to transcend mortality. It's a common thread in many Vedic and Buddhist texts from the Indian subcontinent, and wrapped as well in the Middle Eastern epic of Gilgamesh. Ancient alchemical practices were revitalized in Western Europe in the High Middle Ages. As its practice was based in the arcane, it drew both the interest and ire of outsiders. Alchemy's ways awed many, but for others it flirted with heresy. It grew secretive, symbolic. Its works ciphered, understood only by those involved in its practice. Alchemy's symbolism is found throughout Lies of P. Symbols referencing the planets and precious metals are etched into tablets, walls, and statues. Metals, salts, and compounds are also written in various locations. A significant symbol in alchemical lore is the Ouroboros, a serpent that eats its own tail in imitation of eternal life, the interconnectedness of nature, and of course, alchemy's process of matter transformation. The silent evangelist mace and Ouroboros eye are weapons fashioned like this serpent, and it's seen on many plaques in Arch Abbey and the relic of Trismegistus. But the most interesting and prevalent symbol in Krat is that of blue vitriol, or blue glass. Though in real life this is copper sulfate, blue vitriol in Krat represents the blue crystal, ergo, a mystical substance that powers many things that the alchemists cherish. But more on this in a moment. Several characters in Lies of P are tied to these religious and philosophical beliefs. The monad is a term often used by Gnostics and Hermetics to describe the one supreme deity. The leading family within the alchemists is Valentinus of House Monad. In Gnostic tradition, Sophia is an aeon, an emanation of the monad, the female figure synonymous with the soul and wisdom. Sophia accidentally brings a flaw to the immaterial universe, and from this, matter and soul come to being, as well as the demiurge who creates the material plane. Sophia Monad is the daughter of Valentinus, and she possesses great power over the essence of the soul.
This is about the goddess in the tower. Now she, ooh, is worth saving. Her powers are impossible. Her knowledge is endless. She is more, well, awakened than any of us.
Her abilities set her apart as a goddess. And then, we have the character Simon Pistris Manus, once a disciple of Valentinus and the primary antagonist of the game. His name is a reference to the Samaritan Simon Magus, or Simon the Magician, who used sorcery and witchcraft to beguile many into believing that he was the great power of God. Many texts report that Simon was the founder of Gnosticism and attempted to bribe the apostles to receive the gift of God. The alchemist Simon Manus also appears as a great magician and a man connected to God. Finally, there is Philippus Paracelsus, a 16th century Swiss physician and alchemist credited as the father of modern toxicology and believed by many to be a prophet of astrology and divination. Paracelsus was a hermetic and alchemical master, and his work spawned a movement that transformed alchemy into early modern medicine. Paracelsus appears in Lies of P as an enigmatic master alchemist, a man who seems to have gained immortality and works alongside a cabal of other immortals to unknown ends. He appears to us as the unassuming Jianzhou, who's interested in the gold coin fruit trees, and who often makes comments referencing the real Paracelsus achievements. He is Valentinus Monod's master and influences Krat from the shadows. The most valuable object in Krat is ergo. This blue luminescent substance is obscure. It's beyond exact definition and assumes multiple forms.
Ergo is the miracle that made Krat prosper. Without ergo, there would be no automated puppets to make Krat wealthy. When you move, you tap into the power of ergo within you.
The item description of ergo chunks tell us that ergo is both a power source and a currency in Krat. So ergo, in its crystal form, is used as a battery to power the city's puppets and other technology. But ergo also appears as spores within the atmosphere, and it gives off its own radiation. Ergo wavelengths are believed to be a means by which puppets communicate with one another, and shimmering ergo reveals old memories. The essence of ergo, however, is the human spirit. It's someone's time and energy, their immortal soul distilled. The most common form is crystal, when ergo interacts with and is trapped by the mineral called crowd. Crowd is found in the relic of Trismegistus, the ruins of an ancient civilization that encountered a cosmic being, which we'll discuss in detail later. As the Order's report on crowd tells us, this substance actively hungers for ergo and grows through consumption. Ergo is what elevated Krat to glorious heights. It powers puppets, and it's researched by the alchemists, who believe it's the key to their magnum opus. The lore reveals that ergo is a miraculous power stone that can be mined in the underdark ruins of Krat. Over the decades, ergo has brought great wealth and technological advances to Krat, but it all came with a price: a curse. This curse is the petrification disease, and it's assumed to result from overexposure to ergo.
The petrification disease locks people inside a cage, inside their own bodies. Ergo is the essence of life, made from the petrification disease. It contains the memories and distilled lifespan of the victim.
The bodies of those afflicted calcify, grow scaly as their muscles and joints freeze. Internal organs shut down, causing immense pain and ultimately death. Several outbreaks of petrification disease occur throughout Krat's history. What's significant is that normally when an individual dies, their ergo disperses into the atmosphere. But those who die with petrification disease have their ergo condensed and trapped within a crystal. Beyond mining, this is the second source of ergo, and this process will be abused by the alchemists during the story. Since puppets are powered by ergo, they literally possess the spirit and memories of a deceased human, and through various means can unlock them. This process is known as awakening of an ego. With their ego awakened, a puppet assumes a human persona, acts independently of their programming, and develops a conscience. This transformation is rare, but as we'll later see, it demonstrates a possible path for immortality and is of great interest to the alchemists. This is why the blue vitriol symbol is ubiquitous on alchemical iconography. It is ergo, the key to the eternal. Now, there is magic beyond ergo. It exists in people known as listeners, and in the mythical gold coin fruit trees.
I am able to wield ergo. They call me a listener because I can hear ergo.
These individuals can hear ergo and communicate with puppets, but also seem capable of hearing the thoughts of other humans. Listeners are rare, and their numbers have dwindled further due to alchemist experimentation.
But the alchemists have tainted everything. The gold coin tree is a pathetic creature they created from the listeners. Like many of their creations, it's tragic, but useful. You can control ergo with gold coin fruits. The sad tears of those who became trees.
Many listeners have been petrified, transformed into gold coin trees, and their magic is stored in the plant's fruit, which is famed as a universal panacea, able to cure all forms of disease. An interesting note, though Sophia tells us the trees are products of the alchemists, the gold coin in Hotel Krat predates the Order's arrival and is even mentioned in medieval fables. It could be that Paracelsus created this coin fruit tree. After all, this letter reveals he was the old master of the castle, and during the game, we find him right next to it in the courtyard. As a city of opportunity, Krat attracts the ambitious and powerful. Faction permeates its roots, and many groups struggle to gather wealth, influence, fame, in a delicate balance. The aristocracy are Krat's ruling elite, noble families whose purses brim with centuries of riches and who steer the city with their oversight, who lead in fashion and who support culture through artistic patronage. A middle class of artisans, merchants, and the like attempt to emulate the aristocrats, and both look down on Krat's poor, who populate the slums of the Malum district, Moonlight Town, and Path of the Pilgrim. The Stalkers are Krat's flamboyant warriors. They act as bodyguards for the elite, as mercenaries, assassins, and with the outbreak of the puppet frenzy, hunters of puppets. Stalkers hide their identity beneath animal masks, a tradition rumored to date back centuries, with the added practicality of filtering some of the ergo spores in the atmosphere. These warriors are praised for their bravery and heroism, especially during the tumultuous time of the current day. Stalkers are roughly divided into two groups, the bastards and the sweepers. The bastards are so named because most are the younger or illegitimate children of noble households, set to inherit little from their family. They were reared on life's finer things and pursue the occupation of a stalker to maintain showmanship. Bastards are elegant in battle. They retain the poise and finesse that befit an aristocrat. Their leader, near the time of current events, is Lumacchio, the golden snail, whose favored weapon is the umbrella blade etiquette. Its lore tells us of his disposition. Social dignity can be seen not only in the ballroom, but also on the battlefield. The leader of the bastards did not lose his poise on either stage. The sweepers, meanwhile, come from hardier stock, poor outcasts who escaped the misery of the streets and found purpose in the way of the stalker. The monster sweeper's hunting apparel tells us this. The brutality of the alleyways can be tamed by no one. The sweepers come mostly from the alleyways, and their fighting style is rough and ruthless. They can be hired with money, but buying their trust is difficult. The sweepers contrast with the bastards, favoring brute strength over subtlety. Veronique, the blue sheep, is the leader of the bastards. The two groups are on unfriendly terms. Mutual distrust and contempt stains their relations, and they hoard their secrets from each other. Stalkers equip themselves with the best arms and armaments from the next faction, the Workshop Union. The Union is made of the engineers, technicians, and laborers responsible for Krat's industry. The single greatest invention to Krat came in the form of automated puppets from the workshop of Giuseppe Geppetto, founder and master of the Union. The Workshop Master's workwear tells us that Krat, the capital of automated puppets, was built by their hands. Krat's wealth came from machinery and trams, weapons, and automated puppets. Geppetto and the Workshop Union were the prophets and adventurers of this golden path. And the significance of the Union is further supported in the Primer for Workshop Technicians, which claims that Krat has undergone a brilliant change in the past 30 years, spurred by puppet industry. The puppets made in Krat's workshops are known for using new technology that's on a different level from their competitors. Geppetto, the venture capitalist Lorenzini Vanini, and the Workshop Union were critical in Krat's meteoric rise. Besides puppets, the Union produces nearly all the city's technologies, and develops an ever-expanding arsenal of weapons for their stalker clients within the workshop tower. Puppets are Krat's mechanical laborers. Humanoid in appearance, their tasks range from butler and maid service to underground miners to foundation breakers and even the police force. Giuseppe Geppetto and his workshop first created the puppets, but it wasn't until his collaboration with Vanini that their true potential was realized. Lorenzini, after having lost his parents to a murderous puppet, more on this later, developed the Grand Covenant.
The Grand Covenant is a set of absolute commands imprinted on puppets when they are made. First law: all puppets must obey their creator's commands. Second law: a puppet may not harm humans. Third law: a puppet protects and serves humans and the city of Krat. Fourth law: a puppet cannot lie.
The laws of the Covenant control puppet behavior and make it impossible for them to disobey or harm humans. If you're familiar with the robots books of Isaac Asimov, this is pretty much the same thing. The Grand Covenant earned the people's trust and led to wholesale adoption of puppet technology. Unknown to all but a select few, Giuseppe had installed a hidden Law Zero that, when activated, would render all puppets completely loyal to him, their creator.
Carlo, I hope you can hear me. The laws of the Grand Covenant bind us. We're his puppets. First law: all puppets must obey their creator's commands. Law Zero: the creator's name is Geppetto. Giuseppe Geppetto.
We'll talk more about Law Zero and Geppetto's motives, but this leads to the puppet frenzy that grips Krat at the game's opening. The final faction exerts immense influence on all aspects of life within Krat and wields secret power. The alchemists of the Isle arrived on the outskirts of the city roughly 30 years before the events of the game, drawn by the mysterious substance ergo and the otherworldly fables of ancient Krat. The alchemists see in ergo the potential path towards immortality. The organization scours mines beneath the city and ruins of a forgotten civilization. Alchemists are likewise interested in the petrification disease that plagues Krat. They kidnap locals, expose them to horrific experiments to distill elixirs and ergo secrets. Their motto, "Awaken, Evolve, Ascend," encapsulates the alchemists' pursuit. They wish to awaken the mind through hidden knowledge, evolve humanity through genetic and chemical experiments, and ascend to godhood and immortality to create what they deem the perfect world order. The alchemists are ambitious and unbound by moral sentiment. Their resources are inexhaustible. Through bribery, coercion, and deceit, they manipulate all other factions. Since their appearance, the alchemists have become the city's true rulers. Valentinus Monod was the leader of the alchemist faction when they first arrived in Krat, a skilled scientist and archaeologist. Simon Manus, a bright young protege, quickly ascended to Monod's right hand. Then there are the beasts. Carcass monsters are a blanket term to describe every creature that has been mutated into an abomination. They are the progeny of alchemist experimentation, and a truth the Order works hard to keep secret. Carcasses arose from trials with ergo and as failed attempts at perfecting an elixir to neutralize petrification disease. The alchemists conducted many immoral tests. As they distilled their miracle elixirs, they infected hundreds with carcass mutations. Some carcass monsters maintain a familiar appearance, but they're no longer human. They rage with a mindless hunger, driven to feed on ergo of both puppets and the living. They have stingers, tentacles, pustules. Some, especially those found in the Krat Zoo, were once animals. Alchemists and others who survive elixir injection without corruption are believed by the Order to have awoken. The injection is a trial by fire that separates the worthy from the worthless. Those too weak become carcasses. The carcass desire for ergo is so strong, the organism is often seen to corrupt and control inanimate puppet material. It's implied that the sacred relic, the arm of God, was used by the alchemists to develop elixirs and critical in the production of carcass monsters. As the Carcass Crystal Axe tells us, the alchemists achieved the brilliant truth that they desired. However, their achievements were sometimes made on the flesh and blood of humans. Krat has always been a source of mystery. Its history runs thousands of years, to a time from which only myth survives. Though there are conflicting accounts of those days, a shared essence forms a general structure. In the beginning, it was a wish. It had to be a wish. It's the only paradise perishable humans can have. For thousands of years, humans' wishes perished, but one reached a star. That was a miracle. More so because that star was a very good one. The star answered the humans and descended to Earth. Then, everything began. Ancient humans, in the process of living, professed their hopes, fears, and dreams to the heavens. Wishes were a means for mortals to preserve themselves, to strive for immortality. One day, something in the firmament listened and answered. Some sources call it a god, some a shape-shifting angel made of metal, others a simple meteorite. But one thing is certain, it landed near Krat, and in its coming, everything changed. There's a mysticism in Lies of P concerning space and celestial objects. Meteorites in the form of star fragments often rain down from the skies and are purported to contain magic properties. The item description tells us that star fragments cross dimensions to grant human wishes. This heavenly connection between wishes and stellar bodies is affirmed many times throughout the ancient lore. One such body came to Krat and brought with it its magic. A star that was curious about humans, pretended to be human, then became one. The humans saw its splendor and called it an angel. Although its form was the same, its substance was different. The undying substance, the breath of metal that lives forever. The angel gladly shared immortality with humans. Now, there are a couple ways this account can be interpreted. First, an intelligent and alien being was drawn from space by the human wish for immortality. A creature made of undying metallic substances that altered its form to appear more human before blessing people with its gift. Second, this is instead a metaphor for a meteorite composed of rare mystical metals crashing into Earth around Krat, and its discovery by ancient culture providing a technological boom. In either case, I'll refer to it as an angel for simplicity. The angel landed in what would later be called the relic of Trismegistus, or the Devil's Pit, and it's possible the substance ergo, or at least its crystalline counterpart Crowd, was brought alongside it. This was an incredible event. We've already discussed the essence of ergo and the power held within its crystal form. Such a substance paved the way for a golden age of ancient advancement. Deep in the relic of Trismegistus, we see the buried ruins of ancient Krat. Shrines, altars, effigies, and inscriptions adorn their structure, all in thanks to the angel and its gift. We know precious little about ancient Krat, but the cube and wishstone items tell us that the people of ancient Krat knew how to bottle a wish upon a star. The wishstone could be put in a cube made from a meteorite to display special powers. These cubes were likely drawn from study or worship of the celestial angel. We also hear of strange rituals whose traditions have been handed down for centuries and appear in the current day as the animal masks worn by the stalkers. According to city historians, it was customary to wear animal masks in ancient Krat. It was one of the rituals to show off one's life when one fought the legendary rock titans. But this leads to more questions than answers. Were these sacrificial rituals? Were these tests of strength and merit? And what of the rock titans they faced? Nowhere else in the lore are they mentioned. Perhaps they allude to the cave shards of Crowd, an inorganic substance that harbors surprisingly lifelike characteristics. It's early to hypothesize, but I wonder if Crowd is some mineral life that consumes ergo. How else can be explained that abnormal growth? Or a ruin's defense device that reacts to anomalies? The greatest happenings of ancient Krat are preserved in stone etchings found on the edifice of Arch Abbey. In the current day, it's the island headquarters of the alchemists, but much of the structure might have once been a monument in days past. A triptych of glyphs showcases the wishes heard by the angel. This symbol corresponds to the cube in wishstones. Then, the angel descending and people praising. The third is more subtle, a twisting structure reaching toward heaven. Maybe the original construction of the Arch Abbey. The most intriguing aspect of ancient Krat is its downfall. As all mythical civilizations are wont to do, Ancient Krat vanished in catastrophe. The Angel of Wishes held reality-shaping power that was sadly unrestrained by moral sentiment. As a celestial being or inanimate substance, it had no regard for human concepts of good and evil. It simply fulfilled desire. From the forbidden book titled The Wish Granter, we hear that it appears to bear humanity only goodwill and reflects the desires of those around it, striving to make them happy. But this being is only a mirror. It cannot comprehend the moral compass of good and evil, and those who ask for their wishes to be granted will, in the end, see the results they've wrought. It's not hard to imagine how destructive this is. The corrupt, malicious, evil, any of society's bad actors had as equal access to power as the benefactors. An internal struggle of wish and desire ripped ancient Krat apart too late for anyone to stop it. They learned the difficult lesson that wish is a double-edged sword, and the survivors of chaos turned against the angel. An angel's gift was something humans dare not enjoy. Many humans died with hope in their hearts, and the ones who lived harbored rage instead of death. Eventually, humans destroyed and burned their hope on their own. This is how the angel became the god torn to death. This entry is critical as it potentially hints at both the first large outbreak of petrification disease and a sort of proto-carcass monster. Those who died with hope in their hearts could reference victims of petrification whose soul and memories have condensed into hearts of ergo. Those who lived in rage rather than died have been twisted beyond reason, turned into abominations. Of course, this is simply speculation. Once worshipped, the celestial being fell as Krat had, torn apart by a raving mob. A fragment of the angel's power exists in the legendary Arm of God, a relic that would centuries later become an obsession of the alchemists. Some survived the ordeal of the angel's gift and became known as the Immortal Ones, who still stalk the earth, untouched by death. As either the last action of ancient Krat, or shortly after its collapse, a warrior arrived in the altar room where the once revered angel was destroyed. His story is preserved in the lore description of the Trident of the Covenant, a ritual trident that was lying asleep in the relic of Trismegistus. It's presumed to have once belonged to a great warrior who served an ancient king. The warrior of the sea vowed to protect the people from the cursed relic. He kept his vow when his skin was mashed until it was green. This warrior knew the threat of unrestrained wish and bound himself to forever maintain the broken angel in slumber. The cursed relic being either the arm of God or other parts of the angel's body. The covenant, his binding oath, is mentioned only one other place in the lore, on the Dark Moon Moonstone of the Covenant upgrades. The blind butterfly desperately sought a savior, clutching a moonstone. It was as if it wanted this world at least to survive. Around Krat, butterflies are other-dimensional entities, manifestations of strong desires and wishes across both space and time. Perhaps this butterfly's desire was that the arm of God remain hidden, and it drew the warrior as a savior to this location. For centuries, the Guardian maintained his oath, but in the Overture DLC, we see what has become him, the anguished Guardian of the Ruins. That these are the same individual is supported by the fact that it wields a trident of the Covenant in its right hand. Another interesting note is that the Arm of God item illustrates a left arm, while the anguished Guardian is bound in a right hand, perhaps evidence of the alchemists gathering the other pieces of the torn angel. Ancient Krat falls to obscurity. The truth of the slumbering god, ergo, Krat, the relic of Trismegistus, lie in repose beneath layers of earth and myth. But their rest is fitful and requires little to awaken. The next events of any significance in Krat's region occur in the Middle Ages. Two tales, one of a knight, the other of a saint, hint that magic still suffuses the land. Guillaume's ballad recounts the story of a knight sent by his king to scour the plague-ridden country for the disease's cure. An excerpt of the ballad tells us that he found the shining tree on the rocky mountain. The tree's fruit resembles gold coins, and this fruit is a miraculous blessing for many people who have recovered from different diseases and who have been able to escape the plague. he stumbled upon a gold coin fruit tree. That one existed here speaks to how long alchemists have been a presence around Krat. In fact, the first members of the order could very well have been the immortal ones blessed by the angel. After Guillaume found the tree, he declared himself the Holy Knight and established a grand castle around it. But Guillaume's fate is tragic. The cursed knight Halberd, presumably his weapon, states that the discovery of the gold coin tree made the knight of the isolated castle grow vain. The knight sought greater wealth and glory than the king, and ultimately fell to ruin from the king's jealousy. The weapon is found beneath the castle in the relic of Trismegistus, next to an inscription that talks of a person losing their mind, suggesting that Guillaume was brought here following a butterfly but became trapped and perished. His haunting legend and the gold coin fruit reverberate through the castle's cold corridors. It later became a mental rehabilitation hospital, and then in the current day was purchased by the aristocratic patroness, Lady Antonia, and renovated into Hotel Krat. Hotel Krat was built from a cursed knight's castle. They say that the golden tree that once captivated the knight is still asleep somewhere in the hotel. The second tale of medieval Krat is of Saint Frangelico and the establishment of his cathedral. Religious tradition states that while Frangelico stumbled through the cold, he was visited by and wrapped within the comforting feathers of a one-winged angel. We hear this in the Moonlight Town Guide. Just like how the angel wrapped Saint Frangelico in his wings when he fell in the cold, people should help each other. And the one-winged angel motif is frequently found throughout the cathedral's locations. This benevolent being, missing pieces of itself, might be the same angel that came from the stars to visit ancient Krat. That it has only one wing is symbolic of its shredded status, missing at least its second wing, the arm of God. This is further supported by the Forbidden Book, in which the saint details a vision of the angel. It had a smile that offered wisdom and benevolence. It could make wishes come true. At that moment, I knew for certain. This seemingly benevolent being was very dangerous indeed, for it did not know of good and evil. As my last wish, I asked it to return underground. In this way, the world will remember only its supreme benevolence. Frangelico understood the inherent threat of a wish-giver like ancient Krat never had. He likely used its power to establish his great cathedral, but then returned it to slumber beneath the earth. So both Guillaume and Frangelico were guided by visions of the angel that slept. But why had it stirred? These two stories coincide with the rediscovery of the relic of Trismegistus, of Ergo, and of the angel's resting place. From the Order on Crowd report, we learn that 600 years ago, a collapse in the west of Krat revealed this location and drew people to it. The seismic and human activity likely aroused the angel, but with the guardian of the ruin still watching, the angel could only impact through visions and wishes. All these events are significant entries in history and archaeology that the alchemists track, which ultimately brings the order to Krat. From Moonlight Town and the cathedral, from castles and kingdoms, Krat developed into its modern form. Old families of noble blood rule. Most of the town relies upon fishing and farming for sustenance. The truth of Ergo and angels is preserved only in hearsay. Now, in the close of the 18th century and opening of the 19th, winds of change blow. Philippus Paracelsus, a supreme member of the order and an immortal who was either blessed by the angel or has found his own means of transcendence, has, in the intervening centuries, watched over Krat, keen on its potential. From the letter delivered to the garden, we learn that Paracelsus was once master of the ancient castle before handing the deed to Lady Antonia. He's also the impetus for the alchemist's arrival. Paracelsus charges his apprentice Valentinus Monod with uncovering the city's secrets and gathering what knowledge he can on wishes, immortality, and transmutation. Valentinus and his order approached the outskirts of town roughly 30 years before the events of the game. They maintain their distance, establishing headquarters on a fog-blanketed island away from prying eyes. To those in Krat, the alchemists are strange mystics but present no outward threat. On the contrary, the Order has inexhaustible resources and wealth beyond imagination. Monad and the alchemists approach Krat with promises of revitalizing the city. For a largely impoverished fishing town, this is a windfall, and out of awe or greed, none look too closely into the alchemists' intentions. The Moonlight Town Guide tells us that the decision to accept the Order's help is made in Moonlight Town by the Bishop Andreas and Krat's aristocracy. Shortly after their arrival, Monad digs deep into Krat and discovers for a second time in history the existence of crystal ergo veins. But this time, the alchemists realize, if not its full workings, at least its potential. Ergo may be the greatest discovery for Krat's future, but for the alchemists, it's something to be understood and exploited. To continue research in the ruins of Trismegistus and experiment on Ergo, the alchemists need unfettered access. The Order mobilizes all its resources to ingratiate itself to the city and infiltrate all levels of society. Money is a skeleton key, and the Order bribes many in influential positions, chiefly Archbishop Andreas. They funnel monies to his coffers for the cathedral's beautification and to satisfy the man's own increasing greed. The alchemists sponsor large public works to gain the approval of the masses. To turn the aristocracy, who are afraid of losing their influence, the alchemists seek alliance through marriage. Valentinus marries Isabel, a daughter of nobility, and together they found the Monad Charity House, also known as the Rose Estate. And the Charity House Guide tells us, originally, we were a charity organization for poor children, but today, with the Monad family's sponsorship, we've become a boarding school with high-quality welfare and education curriculum. Soon, the Alchemist Order becomes impossibly entwined with Krat, and their directive continues from their island base. During this period, another faction rises. Giuseppe Geppetto and his wife Camille were both high-ranking engineers within the Order. Using ergo crystals as a power source, Geppetto develops the unique technology of puppetry. Giuseppe's invention single-handedly shoots Krat into a technological boom, and an era of prosperity follows. Geppetto and Camille established the Workshop Union, a guild of technicians and engineers responsible not only for puppet production, but many of the city's mechanical needs. The Workshop Technician Manual tells us that many competitors tried to replicate the workshop's special mechanical hearts, only to fail and prove the outstanding gap between their capabilities. The monopoly on the special power stone Ergo and the skills to optimize its efficiency, those are what give Krat's workshop its edge. Headquartered at the workshop tower, Giuseppe buries himself in his work while Camille maintains connection with the Order. In fact, the genius engineer Camille received a request from the alchemists and created a masterpiece. This was the Saintess of Mercy statue that brought back to life the puppets under golden divine protection. Its power illustrates not simply Camille's engineering skill, but also her budding ability as a listener. As individuals deeply attuned to ergo, listeners can hear the crystals within puppets. Giuseppe and Camille have one child together, a young boy named Carlo. Geppetto's work is endless, so he fashions an extremely human puppet called Rosora to keep Carlo company. A fond memory of childhood is preserved in Carlo's doodle, which shows the family together at the zoo. That she is Geppetto's creation and Carlo's friend is confirmed in dialogue.
Wait, I'm okay. I have you. My new friend who looks like my old friend. You gave me the world again. I miss my old friend. But it's okay that you're not him. You're farewell. My forever friend. Who looks like my dear Carlo.
Rosora becomes a significant puppet in the years to come. Soon after claiming the ruins of Trismegistus, Monad creates an extensive alchemist laboratory called the Zelator Facility beneath Krat Castle. From the bundle of old letters addressed to Valentinus by the patriarch of the Wolfe family, we learn that Monad collaborated with Krat's nobility on its construction. As a result of the last summit, we venerable families have decided to sponsor the Zelator Laboratory construction plan actively. The only possible variable is that they won't give any information about the lab. Being careful is a good thing, but we're the ones who provide the funding, so we don't want any uncertainties. I had no idea that place known as the Devil's Pit had so much value. But when a gold mine or a secret is revealed, you can't put the cat back in the bag. This massive network of underground facilities was kept secret even from the nobles, and so was its purpose: the central lab for petrification disease and elixir experimentation. Zelator is a nightmare that reveals the alchemists' depravity in their pursuit of the magnum opus. They have no remorse. They torture and mutilate in the name of progress. Row upon row of metal cells house the Order's experiments, humans that are test subjects against their will. At this time, Krat Castle was still functioning as a mental rehabilitation hospital, and we can see from many of the carcass monsters that fill its chambers that the alchemists drew their test subjects from the hospital's patients. Here too, the Order conducted trials on listeners. Inside, we see a hall dedicated to listener anatomy, gold-coined fruit tree research, and even an immature tree planted on a stand. This young gold tree is perhaps a clue to the first tragedy of the Geppetto family. As mentioned, Camille was a listener and one-time member of the Order. A handful of alchemists sought the secrets of the gold-coined fruit tree and believed it could be propagated through listeners. They apprehended Camille and experimented on her, with deadly results. Do not forget the importance of the listeners. They must always be approached with great care. Now, this recent series of accidents has robbed us of a listener candidate. I acknowledge that managing this specific candidate was difficult due to the subject's position and the high amount of interest in her. However, this accident resulted in her death, the mysterious death of a family member of the head of the workshop union. The members who planned this misguided experiment will be dealt with. They were not authorized to attempt to create linkages between listeners and the Great One's relics. From this letter, we can infer the alchemists attempted to use different relics directly on Camille, a process that killed her, and it's probable her remains are the young tree within Zelator Labs. But, as with everything, the alchemists covered up the truth. A tear-stained, crumpled letter written by Valentinus reads, "My dearest Geppetto, it's my duty to bring you the regrettable news of Camille's death. Reports indicate the job was proceeding as planned when a catastrophic chemical leak occurred, leading to a colossal mortality event. There were no survivors. Due to ongoing toxicity at the site, search and recovery operations have been called off. His wife's death left Giuseppe broken and bereft. His grief destroyed not only himself, but his son, Carlo. I'm not the man I was before Camille, but I'm no longer the man I was when she was still here. I needed her eyes to see the world without pain, her soul to learn how to love. Yet no matter how hard I try to remember now, it all slips through my fingers. My world has lost all color," Giuseppe writes to his old friend, Lady Antonia. He flees his pain rather than confront it and drowns himself in work. Geppetto burns midnight oil in the workshop tower, iterating on puppets like a man gone mad. He abandons a young Carlo and the boy's doll Rosora to the Monad charity house for proper education. This cuts deep into the child's heart.
I want to go home. I don't want to be here. How many sleeps till Daddy's back? 10 sleeps? 20?
Soon enough. You know he's quite busy.
It's while Carlo is boarded at the Rose estate that he meets and befriends another boy named Romeo. The two grow inseparable, and both are overawed by the heroism and bravery of Krat's stalkers. They revere one stalker in particular, Leia Florence, the adopted daughter of Valentinus Monad. Leia once followed the path of her father, but in a letter written to him, reveals her disgust with the alchemist's ways, that staring too long into the abyss will corrupt any heart, and she breaks ties with Valentinus. Leia is notable for her unique fighting style and her solitary journey. She joins neither the sweepers nor the bastards, but founds the path of the cricket. Intervening years bring in an explosion of puppet technology from Master Geppetto as he denies the past. making from memory one or several automated maids that resemble his lost wife. But then, something peculiar transpires. The first ever documented occurrence of a human ego awakening within the ergo of a puppet, and it's the ego of Camille. This is a critical moment in the lore, so I'll read the entirety of First Discovery Camille. Before that, ergo was seen as just a travel expense for a holy journey of the Order. It was God's gift, but they didn't know that was truth itself. However, God gave us fools that revelation for our enlightenment. It was God's miracle that Camille was made into a made puppet. Despite being in the early phase when the design was rudimentary, Camille caught and saved a baby who fell from a crib. Such function was nowhere to be found in the design. Her appearance and identity in living years were similar, so it was probably easier for her to manifest an ego. After hurriedly collecting Camille to launch an investigation, the Order found out she understands language and got a message. Send me back to my child. By interrogating and taking Camille apart, the Order had opened the door to a new possibility. Later, means of control such as the Grand Covenant emerged, but it was a small problem compared to this discovery. Ergo was not a simple power stone, it embraces life. Through Ergo, we can open the door to eternal life. Wake up, evolve, ascend. With this discovery, humankind will achieve immortality. That Camille's ego, her personality and soul, manifested within the puppet's ergo, was a breakthrough for the alchemists. Here was the potential to resurrect the dead and preserve the immortal soul within a mechanical structure. And she's not the only awakened puppet. Two others gained some semblance of humanity: Carlo's companion Rosora and the detestable Arlecchino. The ego of a sadistic and murderous villain awoke within the puppet Arlecchino, who, in his mechanical form, went on a killing spree throughout Krat. The puppet Ripper weapon and murderer puppet's amulet relay his horrid story. Krat has a legend about a grinning, hedonist murderer. They say his heart was made of clockwork. The joy of having killed a human lies dormant within the clockwork heart. I will kill anything that resembles a human. Self-styled as the blood artist, Arlecchino found pleasure in murder and pursued it exclusively. Among his victims were the parents of a young Lorenzini Vanini. The terror of that night was forever etched in the entrepreneur's mind.
But I am an orphan. In fact, my parents were murdered before my very eyes. The authorities in Krat insisted it was a mugging, but I know what I saw. A mad, raving puppet killed them. A puppet that was driven by a murderous lunatic's awakened ego. I know that because the lunatic told me his name. Arlecchino. I'll never forget his insane laugh.
Leia Florence, who had already carved out fame from previous feats, was the only one powerful enough to confront and defeat Arlecchino. She pierced the puppet 9 times and ripped his body apart. This heroism earned her the moniker, the legendary Stalker.
Many a stalker tried to apprehend the blood artist, only to die by his blade. But he was no match for one in particular, who took him down on her own. The stalker not only beat the blood artist in single combat, but she utterly dismantled him. And she goes by the rather pedestrian name, Leia Florence, though most everyone just calls her by the loftier moniker.
Awoken puppets represented unpredictability in the machines. Vanini, scarred by his parents' death, later collaborates with Giuseppe Geppetto to create the Grand Covenant, the program that binds all puppets to harmless servitude. Following these events, the alchemists, especially Simon Manus, launch a flurry of research into ego, ergo wavelengths, ergo crystals, and their formation. They order the retrieval of Arlecchino's remains and track down the puppet Rosora. The Order also prepares its most daring experiment yet. Alchemists unlock the secret to producing more ergo crystals. Of those who die afflicted with petrification disease, naturally condenses into harvestable crystals, a source of precious gems beyond the mines of Trismegistus. The Order wishes to collect as many crystals as possible, so actively begins to spread petrification disease. They flood Krat's streets with ergo. They promote the widespread use of ergo-powered puppets. They create other devices and utilities that rely on ergo, likely touting it as a clean, safe energy. They unload radioactive substances and elicit petrification disease. It works. Outbreaks become more common, which has the secondary benefit of allowing alchemists to peddle their experimental elixirs under the guise of cures. We hear this in the Confession of Clark Shore, an alchemist known as Dr. Cure-All. I intend to confess my sins. I made innumerable medicine sales under the guise of it being a cure-all. At first, even I was sure about my experiment. Early on, the cure really was effective in neutralizing petrification disease. And why would the great alchemist's records be wrong? Other alchemists also sell their experiments as medicines for the disease. There are 3 possible results. Either the person dies of petrification, they are transformed into a carcass monster, or they are strong enough to survive the purification process and awaken. All cases benefit the Order. Truly, one can't be more deplorable than the alchemists. As the Order's experiments continue unnoticed, Carlo and Romeo finish their schooling at the Monad Charity House. Lady Antonia watches over Carlo as he matures. The cherry-scented letter from an old friend tells us she went as far as taking the young boy on a tour, which included a visit to Giuseppe's hometown. But Antonia is only a grandmotherly benefactor in Carlo's life. She realizes the boy needs his father. Geppetto remains in his misery. A world of distance separates the two.
He didn't even come to your graduation? I don't care if an old man like that kicks the bucket.
Don't say that. It's nice you got any family at all.
Let's start talking about this. Oh, she's here. Grab her.
Instead, Carlo finds his parental figure and mentor in the legendary Stalker. Both Romeo and Carlo respect Leia Florence and repeatedly ask her to apprentice them. At first, she finds the pair a nuisance, and after having recently broken from her family, 2 young students would be a distraction. But their resolve shatters her own, and she agrees to take them on. It seems she needed Romeo and Carlo as much as they needed her.
So taking responsibility for you and Romeo, it was more than I could bear at the time. But in the end, you 2 saved me. You washed away all the spite and hatred in my heart.
The trio forge an unbreakable bond. They become each other's lifelines, 3 orphans that built their own family together. We see this in the photos of halcyon days and a family's happy memory. Leia, Carlo, and Romeo were a triumvirate of stalkers committed to justice and good. Their relationship referenced in the lore of the triumvirate amulet. They were 3 bodies, but their mind was one. An item received after defeating Romeo in his puppet form, but more on his fate later. Decades have now passed since the alchemist came to Krat. Carlo's future is full of promise, but a fateful accident cuts his life short and coincides with the alchemist's greatest discovery in the relic of Trismegistus. For years, the Devil's Pit has been mined for ergo and excavated to reveal Krat's ancient civilization. But in the deepest section of the mine, the Order uncovers something godlike slumbering, something inhuman but alive.
Oh, I've only heard rumors. I certainly haven't seen it in person. I've heard alchemists found it sealed away in the ruins deeper underground. Now, I don't buy this, but my sources claim the discovery was alive. But not human. Perhaps that is why the alchemists seem to have cleared out.
They stumble upon the Arm of God altar, the guardian of the ruins who has for centuries maintained his covenant, and beyond him rests the most powerful of all objects, the Arm of God. That fragment of the fallen, slumbering angel. As its lore description reveals, it's a mysterious relic that the alchemists treated as a sacred object. The alchemists believed that there was once a god who was ripped to shreds, trying to give immortal life to the humans he so loved, and they wanted to revive him. The Order is abuzz with this exciting discovery and invites several among Krat's elites to an exclusive unveiling ceremony of both the Arm of God and its guardian. The Ruin's secret gathering invitation, given to us by Carlo's puppet Razora, reads, "The alchemists of the Isle have spent the past decades trying to uncover the secrets hidden within these ruins. At last, we have discovered the great truth and wish to share our success with you. We invite you all to the excavation of a historical altar hidden within the Ergo veins." The contents of this invitation and meeting are highly confidential and intended for the invitee only. Invitee, Carlo Geppetto. There are two possible motives for this invitation: that the alchemists truly wish to showcase their discovery, to prove their worth and quell rumors of their selfish pursuits, or that they lured a group of those they thought most dangerous to their enterprise to silence them for good. As the son of the workshop guild master and a budding stalker, Carlo is an ally the Order would like to control, but his association with the troublesome Lea Florence could disrupt the alchemist's purpose and reveal the truth of their agenda. So, either from malicious intent or negligence, the alchemists bring the group to the Arm of God altar. The gathering awakens the guardian of the ruins, who, out of his oath to protect the arm, likely massacres all present. Carlo Geppetto, the child Giuseppe believes he still cares for, but who he can't bear to confront, dies within the Devil's Pit. Another possible but less plausible connection between the Guardian and Carlo rests in the Pale Knight weapon, gained from the boss's Ergo. Its item description states it was the chosen weapon of the Stalker Falcon, also known as the Noble Knight, who felt their duty was to protect innocents. We aren't told Carlo's stalker identity, but we also don't know of any other stalker to directly face the Guardian of the Ruins, so it could have been his weapon. Also, the character of Romeo is frequently connected to the title of a king. Perhaps his best friend assumed the role of the king's noble knight. In any event, the alchemists rely again on deception. They publish a false account in the local newspaper. A clipping reads, 13 noteworthy figures in Krat society are believed dead after a cruise ship belonging to one of the individuals capsized late last night. City officials inform us the excursion aboard the ship was part of an educational tour meant to give dignitaries a full view of Krat's history, cultures, and philosophies. They further allege that an immediate family member of the head of the workshop union was among the fatalities. Cover-up and deception is such a common theme throughout the game that it even appears in the loading screen documents. The alchemists control all streams of information. They disperse propaganda and weave lies. We can't take anything at face value. One such screen declares Carlo died of petrification disease, and though we can't say definitively what happened, much of the information in the DLC Overture conflicts with this statement. Carlo's death pushes Giuseppe beyond the brink. The workshop master has lost his entire family and descends to madness. I have learned the devil's method. The subject's body must be fresh, minimal post-mortem time. The container must have a close resemblance to the subject. Appearance is key. The essence acquired from the subject must have been produced before death. If this is true, only one element is missing, and it requires a desecration I can't begin to imagine. But I can still get the child back myself. If so, that is the only course I can take. I will have no choice but to make this my singular purpose. The madman's notes tell of Geppetto's discovery of a ritual to resurrect his son Carlo. The man of obsession and coldness gathers his son's body shortly after death and preserves it in a heavy container, a grotesque combination of metallic frame wrapped in flesh, called the Nameless Puppet. The loss of Carlo hits Lea and Romeo hard. His adoptive family suspects the Order, and both work to uncover the truth. It could be around this time that the legendary stalker allies herself with another legendary individual, the hound Alidoro, also known as the Tracker. The Tracker arrived in Krat with his sister from lands far to the east, and since then, he's mistrusted the alchemists here. He works meticulously to dispel the Order's lies. The Tracker cooperates with a reporter that writes scathing exposés on the city and the alchemists under the pen name of Medoro. From the document, Special Report, Foreigner's Confession, we learn a little about the Hound Alidoro. Being a reporter, I received a surprising message from an informant who was once an alchemist himself. It's about a stranger from across the ocean, an alchemist from the Far East who was once famous in Krat. He learned of the group's secrets and quit, and he now uses a different identity out of fear for his safety. Other documents mention that a sub-organization of the alchemists from the Far East exists and was running successful experiments with the gold coin fruits as a cure for petrification disease. Alidoro appears to have been a member of this faction, but was so disgusted by his brothers and sisters in Krat that he forswore the alchemists. He and Medoro use words to fight the Order, while he and Leia use action. From the bounty placed on Alidoro's head by the alchemists, we learn fugitive fled after inflicting serious damage upon the Order. Multiple charges have been filed, including theft of confidential information, destruction of property, abduction and luring of Order members, defamation against the Order. The legendary Stalker's pursuit of justice for Carlo brings her and the Hound into close association. Carlo and the 12 other deaths in the altar chamber doesn't douse the alchemist's fervor at discovering a piece of their god. Valentinus Monad believes the arm is key to the Order's magnum opus, perfect transmutation and immortality. Simon especially is obsessed with waking the slumbering god, communicating with it, and ascending himself to godhood. In the years since their arrival, Simon Manus has emerged as a genius with vision, ruthless in his desire for ascension. A meteoric rise elevates him to second most influential member of the Order. His childhood was one of paternal abuse and hatred. Simon has skills similar to a listener. He can hear the thoughts of others, which in youth alienated him, and he despises the lies people constantly tell. Ironic, considering how false his organization is. Manus believes deception is the root of all pain in the world, and his greatest desire is to create a world built on truth. Monad researches the arm of God and conducts experiments with it. Their first subject is the Guardian of the Ruins. From the Hymn of the Zealots, we hear the Guardian suffering. We brought that force of nature to heal, subdued and chained it with iron and steel. Refusing to be the elixir's vessel, it broke itself, but could not break free from its chains, and so we sculpted it to our will. Now it is forever bound to witness this song of zealotry. The pitiful warrior was injected perhaps several times with elixirs. His own humors were drawn to produce potions. His mind was broken, and his body transformed into a beast. And the Nightmare's amulet further details the Guardian's descent to madness. A being twisted by torture can see through the pain of others. The Nightmare, having lost its ancient oath, despises the living and waits for the moment they suffer. With the arm of God in the alchemist's possession, their Zelator laboratory becomes an even more despicable prison of torture. Monad keeps the arm hidden in his office at the charity house when not in use, but tests it and the anguished Guardian in their facilities. Another section from the Hymn of the Zealots tells us the breakthrough the arm of God provides for the magnum opus. The two-faced overseer, forged from the flesh of ancients, was but a trial to prove the truth of our impending ascent. The two-faced gives way to a masterpiece, a warrior monstrous and strong, a great champion to fight for the Order, to save the right from the wrong. The flesh of ancients, i.e. the arm of God, transformed either a human test subject or a carcass monster into the two-faced overseer, the most ascendant being within the Zelador facility. This hymn also alludes to a future boss in Champion Victor, fought while in the Grand Exhibition. He is a great champion, monstrous and strong, who had died but was returned to life through alchemical elixirs. On the surface, Krat is experiencing a golden age of enterprise, but cracks in the Order's house soon show. Valentinus Monad has to this point turned a blind eye to Simon Manus' faction and their rather extreme experiments. But his right-hand man grows more brazen, and tension develops. First, Simon's interest in Ergo and awakened ego leads him to gather the broken frame of Arlecchino, with the murderer's Ergo still intact. The words of Monad's aide Arden tell us in the petition to the Order, firstly, while I understand your appreciation of Simon's talent, you must understand how malicious the man has become. I've confirmed he actually procured a puppet driven by the Ergo of a deranged killer, a heinous thing tainted with blood and as dark as the abyss is deep, simply so he could study it. Next, we hear that Simon disobeys orders and positions himself as a demagogue within the alchemists. He goes by his middle name Pistris and speaks as though he is God's messenger. No doubt, he uses his power of reading thoughts to manipulate many within the order. A senior counselor named Luca denounces Simon in his accusation. Not only is he using Ergo for personal gain, he is carelessly exploiting it. He's even gathering followers and convincing them that he will lead them to ascension, to godhood. He's making no effort to hide his true intentions. But what ultimately tears the alchemists apart, at least in my opinion, is Simon's interest in Valentinus's young daughter, Sophia Monad. As mentioned earlier, Sophia is a powerful being within Gnostic tradition, and the character of Sophia is similarly powerful. She, like her mother Isabel, is a listener and strongly bound to Ergo, but she's something more entirely. In fact, the puppet Arlecchino describes her as a deity and goddess.
Are you either? This is about the goddess in the tower. Now she, is worth saving.
Beyond the abilities of a listener, Sophia is connected to dimensional forces and the purity of wish. During the events of the game, she protects Geppetto's puppet by literally rewinding time whenever he's in danger. She can project her image across space, and blue butterflies display her aura. Butterflies in Krat represent the unshakable pull of wishful desire. Simon developed a fondness for Sophia, perhaps even a sort of reverential love. After all, we see a portrait of her amongst Simon's possessions at the top of Arch Abbey. But he couldn't deny his curiosity and wanted to use her in his transcendental push for godhood. So, in my opinion, Simon's desire for Sophia led to the schism between his faction and Monad's. But I'd love to hear your own theories. As we approach the events of Overture, we have Krat living in an illusion with a powder keg beneath it, set to explode. Vanini and Geppetto's Grand Covenant-bound puppets are ubiquitous, powered by Ergo crystals, the density of which saturates the city and makes the population vulnerable to petrification outbreaks. The alchemists have come, uncovered the potential in Ergo, in the Arm of God relic, and awakened puppets. Geppetto, meanwhile, bides his time and plans for Carlo's revival, no matter the cost. Leia and Romeo mourn the loss of their beloved friend in their own way. They resist the alchemists and attempt to disabuse Krat of the Order's presumed benefit. Overture is a prelude to Lies of P's main story. It unfolds in Krat's twilight. No date is given for these events, but the cuddly hotel cat Spring is only a kitten here. It's safe to say at least half a year, but potentially a couple years pass between. This is a point of inconsistency for me. We're told by our cricket guide Gemini that Overture happened a long time ago, and yet, some events that unfold can only have happened weeks or months before the base game. All I can say is that time is strange in Krat. Here, in winter, the Krat Zoo, which at the time of the game had already burned down from a supposed accident, stands and is the target of alchemist interest. A group of the Order, led by the enlightened one Marchiona, the puppeteer of death, has taken control of the zoo. A legend surrounds Rex. The crocodile is believed to have eaten the zoo's founder, Colonel Little. In truth, the alchemist murdered the colonel to gain control of the zoo. The bloody cipher message tells us this: target neutralized. No notable actions observed. Taxidermy secured in excellent condition as ordered. You are now the sole master of the zoo. Congratulations, Lady M. Marchiona is a genius within the alchemists, and she sides with Simon Manus, interested most in ergo and the ego of awakened puppets. The Death's Talon description tells us that Marchiona was once a child prodigy of Geppetto in the Workshop Union before she joined the alchemists. In fact, Marchiona was responsible for the first observation of an awakened ego in the puppet Camille. The announcement for the Brotherhood of Truth tells us Marchiona earned such high prestige in the Order due to the immense worth of her achievements. It was she who discovered the secret of the sacred maid puppet, a sign from God that opened the door to the potentiality of immortality. Though Marchiona left the Workshop Union, she retained both her mastery over puppets and her belief that their egos demonstrated human rebirth. It's also theorized that her knowledge of ergo assisted Geppetto in developing the P organ for his puppet masterpiece before she defected. The woman is proud and controlling. Her key contains a quote, "I dominate all beings that I touch." It seems she invented the ergo-powered puppet string gauntlet that makes a second appearance on Geppetto's arm much later in the story. Marchiona sponsored the alchemist's attempt to bypass the Grand Covenant and control puppets directly. This led to the construction of arch puppets, advanced metal warriors completely beholden to the Order. Marchiona's letter to Simon reads, "The key has escaped, but the operation proceeds smoothly, according to the plan. We never found his hidden absolute commands, but we discovered a way to bypass the Covenant. We now have the ability to force more puppets to follow the will of the Order. My experimental arch puppets will become the very foundation of the Order's great armies." The key to which this letter refers is the puppet Rosora, whom Marchiona had trapped within a cage in her lair. Rosora, like Camille, is an awakened puppet and acts independently on a level like humans. To Marchiona and many alchemists, awakened egos were rebirth for the human soul and a blade to sever the Grand Covenant. Even Geppetto's secret Law Zero, the existence of which the Order suspected. Marchiona comes to Krat Zoo to recover Rosora, further test her arch puppets, and to unleash the monstrous experiments that once were Krat's zoo animals. Eldritch elephants, enhanced primates, and deadly reptiles rampage throughout the zoo as proof of the alchemist's work. It's this outbreak of petrification disease and carcass monsters that draws Romeo's attention. By the time you read this letter, I will be at the zoo, taking care of the matters I recently informed you about. Please, don't be concerned that I'm acting on my own. I'm not a child anymore. I hope instead you will focus on getting some rest. Your health won't improve without it. Romeo's letter to his master Leia hints that the legendary stalker has herself contracted petrification disease. The young stalker pursues the threat alone, but after no word of him for many days, Leia Florence begins her search. Throughout Overture, Leia is driven by guilt over Carlo and a desire to spare Romeo a similar fate. But alchemists aren't the only danger. The legendary stalker learns a nightmare from her past has returned. Arlecchino, the murderous blood artist. The first time Leia and Arlecchino fought, she destroyed his puppet frame as best she could, but somehow, his ego remained. Simon salvaged the massive scrap, and the alchemists repaired Arlecchino's body before shipping him to their isle. Some alchemists, perhaps loyal to Valentinus Monad, were given an order. The puppet locked in the brig is dangerous. To even think of releasing something as mad as that into the city, it can't be allowed. When we've traveled sufficient distance from the city of Krat, retrieve what ergo is left inside that puppet and permanently dispose of whatever remains. But while in transit, infighting consumes the ship and the puppet escapes. The massacre of the Archon fleet found later is predominantly Arlecchino's handiwork. The mad puppet vows vengeance against the legendary stalker and intends to maximize Leia's pain.
It's time I paid a visit to the zoo and remind her of her debt.
He hunts for her apprentice Romeo. In fact, more so than Romeo or Leia, the alchemists fear a free Arlecchino, as the Emergency Directive No. 1 recounts. This is an emergency directive from the Order, set to the highest priority. Intelligence gathered indicates that a puppet currently headed to Krat Zoo could significantly affect the Order's plans. Marchiona and the alchemists under her command are hereby ordered to stop the target's advance at all costs. And in her boss fight, Marchiona admits she was expecting a killer puppet, not us.
I was told that murderous puppet had come to call on me. So who is this handsome guest standing before me?
Arlecchino resurfaces at the same time the Order devolves into civil war. The Carcass crystal weapon handle tells us that the inhumanity of the obsessive research by the alchemists caused an internal revolt. Valentinus rallies those loyal to his side, while Simon Pistris rouses religious spirit within the Brotherhood of Truth. Critically, Philippus Paracelsus, who has monitored his Krat experiment from the shadows, blesses Simon and condemns his old disciple. The Great Master's letter of excommunication, left in Monad's office by Paracelsus, reads, "I'm told you have succumbed to delusion and abandoned the path of truth, Valentinus. The human heart can be pitiful, but it's resilient, and I see you were unable to discard your connections to family. But your greater sin? Handing over the Great One's arm. You have fallen so regrettably far. I have no choice but to inform you that in the name of the Council, I declare you excommunicated." There's a bit to digest here. First, this letter further supports that Valentinus despised Simon's affection and interest in Sophia, and perhaps his silent approval of Leia and her actions against the alchemists. But second, it alludes to a significant moment, that Monad gave the Arm of God relic to someone else for safekeeping. But who? Archbishop Andreas, Krat's ecclesiastical leader, was there when the alchemists arrived. He negotiated with Valentinus all those years ago to accept the order. Sure, greed clouded Andreas's judgment, but it's likely that over the decades the two men established a strong relationship, or friendship. When enemies closed around within his own house, Valentinus looked to remove the Arm of God. The Archbishop's diary reveals that he had recently visited the Isle of Alchemists, and a later entry reads, "I have their relic in my hand, thanks to Cecile. I won't let those bastards ruin Krat anymore. This will purify the city. This disaster was divine judgment. They should have been turned away all those 30 years ago." When we explore the ruined cathedral, we can observe an inscription that discusses the arrival of the Arm of God. But with the Archbishop Andreas, we see the potential of the relic. Later, when the alchemists set petrification disease and carcass monsters upon the cathedral, the bishop undergoes a gross, unique transformation. Gold caused even the devout saint to crumble little by little. Unable to acknowledge how corrupt he had become, he escaped into a delusion that he had been chosen by the angel. The Twisted Angel's ergo tells us Andreas fled to a dream, a wish that he was like Frangelico. It's from this wishful desire that he is made to be the angel, though probably not how he imagined. Recall, the cosmic being that descended from the stars was a wish giver. It fulfilled any desire, whether right or wrong, and so it would seem the fragment of it, the Arm of God, retains such power. We see this displayed too in the characters of Simon Manus and Giuseppe Geppetto, who each hold the arm for a time. Simon wishes to ascend to godhood, and so he becomes the awoken god. Geppetto, meanwhile, wishes for the return of his son, and the Arm of God is used to grant that desire in a ritual that transforms the nameless puppet into Carlo. We'll explore these moments in greater detail later. Monad's movement of the arm to the church turns the order inside out. It's a casus belli Simon uses against Valentinus. I have come to a decision at last. A master who has betrayed the truth is no master at all. A church that has betrayed our trust is no friend of ours. We shall bear the light that illuminates the desecrated path of truth once again. We shall deploy all forces from the Zelator underground facility. With the legion of carcass monsters and awoken alchemists from their experiments, Simon attacks Monad's power base at the Rose Estate and the Archbishop's church. He's halted research into ascension and abandoned the path of truth. He has dared place the Great One's physical form into the hands of heretics and unbelievers. You are commanded to cleanse the remnants of heresy from the Rose Estate, purify the Rose Estate and the cathedral with divine elixir. This order leads ultimately to the tragedy of the Rose Estate, and it's also the reason why Frangelico Cathedral is later overrun by carcass monsters. Infighting consumes the order across Krat. Carcasses and petrification disease cover the region in chaos as thick and heavy as the winter's terrible snow.
Indeed, it feels as if we're at the end of the world here. Something scarred this place. But hey.
As with the Order, factionalism cripples the Stalkers. The organization had always been divided into its two groups, but the tension between them reaches an inflection point, caused by either their support or contempt of the alchemists. The Bastards, those members of Krat's elite with connections and influence, side with the Order. This comes as no surprise. Alchemist wealth and largesse has for many years wooed Krat's greedy aristocrats and driven them to corruption. Lumacchio, their leader, has also contracted petrification disease, which we learn from Adoro's report notes, and Lumacchio himself in combat. He's a selfish character driven by preservation and turns to the Order for their promise of an elixir cure. Lumacchio and the Bastards are bought by the Order. They kill rivals, kidnap people for experiments, and deliver false cures for petrification disease, all for the alchemist's promise. The Sweepers, meanwhile, have eyes and ears on the streets. They're aware how the Order exploits the poor, how it harms the weakest of the city, and spreads discord. Veronique, leader of the Sweepers, isn't swayed. When she learns of the atrocities unfolding in the Zelator facility, she and a handful of stalkers attack to destroy not just the alchemist's research, but the disease-afflicted and carcass monsters before they can be unleashed on the city. The Sweepers are no match for alchemist forces and are themselves poisoned, losing their minds and slowly transforming into abominations. It's during this time that the entire Stalker organization is dealt a crushing blow. They lose leadership and authority with the deaths of Lumacchio and Veronique. The rest will shortly be consumed in chaos. So with this as backdrop, the main story in Overture follows Leia Florence's search for her missing apprentice Romeo in confrontation with a vengeful Arlecchino. The legendary stalker, suffering from disease, is determined to save her pupil. She was too late for Carlo. She can't be for Romeo. Leia first stops where Romeo had gone, the Krat Zoo. Here, she finds the young man's cloak and a blood-stained picture of the triumvirate of friends that lies before the disgusting handiwork of Arlecchino. The blood artist leaves a statue of dripping viscera and human remains as a message for Leia. Her rival is returned and will have vengeance. The legendary stalker next follows the trail through Pistris Harbor, where Arlecchino has left an invitation to join him at the Rose Estate. In the forest that surrounds the estate, we finally catch Leia up and fight alongside her. She makes frequent comments on P's familiar appearance and movements.
You have some skill. You must have had a good teacher. Your stance, the way you move, it's oddly familiar.
The puppet, a memory of her lost apprentice Carlo, and his fighting style is reminiscent of Leia's own Path of the Cricket. Horror awaits Leia as she reaches her family's charity house. No one in Krat knew precisely what happened that night, but it was forever remembered as the tragedy of the Rose Estate.
What happened here? Wait, could this be the Monad Charity House tragedy? But that was the petrification disease, wasn't it? This is just a massacre.
The city of Krat decided to put an indefinite stop to the investigation on the disaster that took place in the Monad Charity House, known as the Rose Estate. This was to prevent chaos caused by the large-scale spreading of the petrification disease. The quarantine authorities surmised that the disease caused the novel mutation. The leader of the alchemists, Valentinus Monad, has been confirmed to have passed during this catastrophe. It was covered up by the alchemists, who suspended investigation and spread the lie that it was a natural outbreak of petrification disease. In fact, that winter, many had fled to the Rose Estate to quarantine and escape the stone sickness, The novel mutation mentioned is how authorities described some of the carcass monster remains. And Vanini's landmark guide that covered the Rose estate was actually banned in the city by the Order. What truly destroyed the charity house was the swarm of Simon Manus's carcass creations combined with Arlecchino's bloodlust. This attack elevates Simon to sole leader of a reunited order. Valentinus and the Monad House heretics are slaughtered or transformed.
This must be Valentinus and his wife's chambers, if I had to guess. So many bloodstains.
We see the bloodstained bed where Valentinus likely met his doom, and his daughter Sophia is kidnapped by Simon and taken to Arch Abbey for experiments. The postscript of Sophia's diary found in her room reads, "Simon asked to meet at the harbor, but I declined. It's far too early for the next food shipments. What could he want?" An even more tragic scene awaits Leia. Hanging from the ceiling are Romeo's severed, lacerated arms. The young man has suffered Arlecchino's torture, but his ultimate fate is not yet certain. What's interesting about this shot is its visual allusion to Romeo's boss fight much later as the King of Puppets. His arms appear unnaturally lengthened, much the same as the King of Puppets' mechanical coils. Overture's climax explodes in the estate's rose garden. A suspended Romeo is unconscious but still lives. Arlecchino desires another duel with the legendary stalker, but Leia is nearly incapacitated from stone sickness. P assists her, and together they attack the Blood Artist. Arlecchino wields the unique sickle weapon known as the Puppet Ripper, the same weapon later used by Romeo in the second phase of his fight, and a boss weapon reward. After the pair dispatch Arlecchino and rescue Romeo, P is surrounded by butterflies and transported back to his own place in time. The reason Geppetto's puppet was drawn to the past was because of Leia Florence. The star chrysalis item, used to traverse time, tells us that a butterfly is said to be another form of a spirit embodying a wish. By following a white butterfly, one may be able to find someone's heartfelt wish that was conveyed across even the boundary of time. It's Leia's strong desire to reunite with Carlo and Romeo, to share one last smile and memory as the sun rises over Krat, that pulled us here. Once it's fulfilled, we return. Interestingly, after the DLC, a nexus of white butterflies streams around Eventide Krat's Stargazer and leads us to the hotel's secret room, used by Leia to keep her true joys hidden. Overture's post-credit scene is ominous and sets the stage for future events. As Leia holds the unconscious Romeo, Giuseppe Geppetto arrives with a massive black box. Inside is the nameless puppet, the flesh remains of Carlo entwined with mechanical gear. We don't actually see what follows, so there is room for speculation. One theory, that to me is the most probable, is that Geppetto kills Leia for two reasons. First, as the legendary stalker, she's a dangerous foe that could ruin his plans for revenge and Carlo's resurrection. Even with the petrification disease, Leia would resist Carlo's desecration at all costs. The second is that he wishes to harvest her prowess in combat by gathering her ergo and storing it within the P organ. In essence, P's heart and soul. Geppetto knows that his puppet will have to fight alchemists, carcasses, and puppets to fully charge the P organ. To have in its arsenal the fighting skills of the legendary stalker would assist greatly. This also supports why P's combat is reminiscent of Leia's own. What happens to Romeo and when is less clear. From loading screens and item descriptions, we're told that Romeo suffered from the stone sickness, that he made a deal with the devil, i.e. Geppetto, to preserve his soul in a puppet so that he could continue to protect innocence. But here, Romeo doesn't seem afflicted by the disease. Perhaps he wasn't immediately transformed into a puppet. That in later months, after contracting petrification, he approaches Geppetto. Or, more likely, given Giuseppe's inhumanity, Geppetto saw in Romeo a tool for his vengeance and purposely poisoned the young man with the disease. In either case, Giuseppe keeps from Romeo Leia's fate. Now we come to events immediately preceding P's story. As many of them happen concurrently or in quick succession, I won't focus on precise chronology, but rather the general atmosphere. Simon Manus, drawing on the experiments with Sophia, orders his alchemists to produce as much ergo as possible. To him, blue vitriol is the path for ascension, but only a body purified by alchemical elixirs can absorb the ergo necessary to join the gods. The relic of Trismegistus is furiously mined, but even more ergo is harvested from human sources. From the bodies of those turned to stone, the alchemists gather ergo crystals, but this second form is different from the mined form, less pure. From the factory manager's report, we hear, according to a reliable source, the high-level alchemists are running ergo production experiments lately, using another method. Personally, I think their secret experiments have something to do with the decrease in ergo quality. Unbeknownst to all, the other method is killing and harvesting human ergo. This is also when Giuseppe Geppetto sets his plan into motion. Early experiments to bring Carlo back have resulted in failure. The nameless puppet, Carlo's body, was fitted with a prototype P organ, a device that gathers and refines ergo to energize the puppet frame. But the nameless puppet was dangerously inefficient, threatening to overload its body with the ergo gained. This leads to the creation of Geppetto's masterpiece, P. A puppet so human, so lifelike, it skirts the line between man and machine. An entity not bound by the Grand Covenant, with the ability to lie. P is intended as an ergo harvesting machine to temper and stabilize the P organ, in hopes that it will awake Carlo's ego, which can then be placed in the nameless puppet. Giuseppe builds a secret mobile workshop within a rail car where he constructs P. But two more things are needed to revive his son: a considerable amount of ergo and the arm of God. Geppetto ventures to plague and carcass-besieged St. Frangelico Cathedral to retrieve the arm. I think it's such a cool lore detail that we see this unfold in the very first announcement trailer for Lies of P, released 4 years ago. To gather the tremendous amount of ergo necessary to awaken the P organ and charge the resurrection ritual, Geppetto must liberate ergo not just from Krat's puppets, but its humans as well. So many are afflicted with the stone disease, the ergo of so many is slowly crystallizing within their bodies. What Geppetto needs is a bloody wave of carnage, and he creates it in the puppet frenzy.
Dear citizens of Krat, the recent puppet frenzy is believed to be just a momentary glitch. There is no cause for alarm. Do not panic, whatever you may hear. The city is safe to traverse. We repeat, do not be alarmed, citizens of Krat.
As mentioned, the 3 laws of the Grand Covenant are programmed into every puppet to prevent harm from coming to humans. But Geppetto installed a secret failsafe, Law 0, that, when activated, circumvents the Covenant and renders all puppets completely subservient to their creator. Geppetto invokes Law 0 and orders Krat's puppets to turn on the citizens. And this order isn't even a circumvention of the Covenant per se. Since nearly all Krat is at this point either a carcass monster or afflicted by petrification, the puppets could argue they are no longer human. Overnight, the city is inundated with blood and plunged into mayhem. We hear a morbid account in the Krat Times, issue 183. The occurrence began on Rosa Isabel Street, resulting in hundreds of casualties. While the cause is still unknown, the number of casualties and the scale of damage are both growing. A task force is investigating the possibility of a fatal loss of the Grand Covenant, which is the control protocol of the workshop's puppets. However, many citizens are trying to escape through Krat Central Station, intensifying the general chaos. None know why the puppets are frenzied, and to further divert suspicion, Giuseppe installs a scapegoat. Romeo, Carlo's best friend and Leia's loyal apprentice, finally succumbed to disease and offered himself, or was manipulated by Giuseppe, into becoming a test. The first person transformed directly into a puppet. In the notes from an experiment left by Geppetto in the Estelle Opera House, we hear the success of this experiment. The test subject's body is better than expected. Its ergo coordination, physical sensitivity, and and modification adaptability figures all exceed expectations. Couldn't ask for better results. All that's left is to make a decision. Giuseppe is still cautious with Carlo's corpse and uses Romeo to refine the process. But whatever he had promised Romeo before the procedure was a lie. With his ego slumbering inside a mechanical body, Romeo forgets his past and is also bound to Geppetto through Law Zero. Giuseppe installs the automaton inside the Estelle Opera House on Rosa Isabel Street as the king of puppets, the one to whom all point fingers as the leader of the frenzy. Rampaging puppets strike swiftly at their greatest threat, the city's remaining stalkers. The workshop tower is an arsenal for the stalkers, a bastion for the Union, and it's the location of a significant battle between man and machine. We never see the event, but are told that most of the stalkers died in the workshop tower's collapse, and the rest disbanded. The hound Alidoro survives and rescues his sister from the rubble. She suffers a head injury that muddles her memory, forgetting her own identity and that of her family. The girl names herself Eugenie and would never realize that her savior was her brother. Alidoro continues to be hunted by the alchemists. With the assistance of Leia and Medoro, and using his own skill, the hound uncovers the dangerous secrets buried in Krat. Eventually, fate catches Alidoro up. He's betrayed by an accomplice known only as the Parrot and killed.
I am not Alidoro, the Hound. Not the real one, anyway. I used to be Alidoro's partner. We argued. One thing led to another, and I had to kill him. But stealing his identity was the logical next step. My original code name is Parrot, after all.
Geppetto isn't the only one who desires the ergo released in the Krat Disaster. The alchemists create a massive reactor at the pinnacle of Arch Abbey to channel much of the city's ergo to fuel Simon Manus's greatest ambition, his ascension to godhood. Members of the Order set up a field hospital within the Grand Exhibition, ostensibly to spare people from puppets and treat them for petrification disease. But those they gather simply become elixir test subjects. From 2 documents, we learn that the alchemists have finally achieved a distilled elixir that purifies individuals and evolves them without the dangerous risk of carcass transformation. The experiment report of test subject 890 tells how a stalker, the Owl Doctor, was able to resist elixir side effects for a while. It reads, 3 patients suffering from the petrification disease who got the elixir injections at the same time died. Right up until their deaths, they experienced painful necrosis and skin ruptures, seizures and convulsions, and crystalline metastasis throughout the body. Ultimately, they became mutations known as carcasses. Number 890 was able to suppress neutralization side effects and has been stable for 56 hours so far. I confirmed that the Order's proposal to take a stalker with verified physical abilities as a sample is very effective. The sample extracted is estimated to help the elixir develop in the next step. Sister Adriana, who will receive the next baptism, is expected to be able to fulfill the Order's wishes. Sister Adriana, after receiving this injection, becomes Laxatia, the Complete, an extremely powerful entity that's evolved beyond humanity, capable of commanding the elements. She's Simon's most fervent supporter, and in the Sad Zealot's Ergo, we read, the alchemist Adriana was baptized by the elixir, and she became the first whole being. With Krat in shambles, with alchemists completing their elixir, and puppets rampaging, Sophia Monad, who is a prisoner of Arch Abbey, uses her skill as a listener to reach out. Her wish is that there's still someone who can save Krat, and this wish, in the form of a blue butterfly, makes its way to Krat Central Station, where Geppetto's puppet rests, waiting to be awoken. P's story unfolds in the waning of the Krat Disaster. Already, the puppet frenzy has claimed hundreds of lives, and thousands more have perished from stone disease or alchemical experiments. A grand exhibition showcasing Krat's industry and its plans of a puppet-driven future have been scheduled. A sharp contrast between its bright hope and the bloodstains of despair thicken the atmosphere. Sophia Monad, who projects her image from Arch Abbey to Hotel Krat, the one location defensible enough to protect those few survivors, guides P. The moon phase pocket watch again hints at her temporal manipulation. A pocket watch imbued with mystical power. The power of the watch turns back time to when the boy was in peak condition. Sophia tasks P with saving Krat and uncovering the city's secrets, but he is initially unaware of his intended purpose, to gather sufficient ergo and power the P organ, which Geppetto will then place in Carlo's preserved body. P is unique as a puppet for his ability to lie, and several opportunities arise where he must decide between the harmful truth and merciful deception. The act of lying is a profoundly human experience. It requires conscience and consciousness, foresight, will. As P lies, he taps into that essence of humanity that slowly awakens his ego.
Are you a puppet? Or a human being?
By gaining humanity, he undergoes both an internal and external transformation. P's springs react, he feels warmth, and his metal heart begins pounding. All signs that an individual ego is taking root. His physical appearance changes as well, first growing and then potentially turning a blue-white hue. With this, he exceeds even what Geppetto had expected.
Oh my. This is a change I didn't expect. I'm glad you're growing, but I'm not sure what to make of this. Be wary of dangerous people.
P faces 3 puppets that are peculiar. The Parade Master, Scrapped Watchman, and Fuoco are the king of puppets' emissaries, and they bear his message. It's impossible to decipher until the ergo wavelength decoder is complete, and requires a playthrough in New Game Plus to understand. The puppet Romeo awakens his ego and reclaims his past personality. He learns of Geppetto's evil intent and tries his best to resist, even though he's bound by the Grand Covenant and Law Zero. Through ergo wavelengths, he speaks to some, if not all, of Krat's puppets, and attempts to turn them to his side, to oppose Geppetto in what limited way they can. This is why puppets fight carcasses outside St. Frangelico Cathedral. They weren't sent to kill the survivors, but rather ordered by Romeo to protect the humans.
Protect the humans, so says the king.
Many of these puppets see the king as their savior. They put their trust in him, as if Geppetto's command has brought them anguish. We see this especially in Fuoco, who has taken the name King's Flame. Notes left by the researcher Descartes tells us this. It's surprising. Fuoco's actions were not simple obedience, but faith. Fuoco worships something as a god. I heard there's the king of puppets on Rosa Isabel Street. That must be what's controlling the puppets of Krat. But a puppet having a human ego is a problem from another dimension. When Romeo learns that a skillful puppet, unbound by the Covenant, who bears resemblance to his old friend Carlo surfaces, the king of puppets quickly intuits what horror Geppetto has in store. Romeo sends his 3 messengers to speak with P and bring him before the king, so that Romeo might awaken that piece of Carlo within the puppet, or at least reveal Giuseppe's treachery.
My puppets and I are taking a stand against death itself. That's why I tried sending you messengers. But you got rid of them all. You're still an unstoppable fellow. I remember you. No reason for us to fight, I suppose.
Unfortunately, P doesn't understand their language, and the truth dies with them. In the opera house, Romeo makes one last attempt when he communicates through stage play P's fate. We see a simulacrum of Geppetto rip out the P organ and place it within another puppet, what he intends for P and the nameless puppet of Carlo. His translated dialogue is perhaps the most tragic.
I have to kill you to stop it all. There's no other way. Maybe this is what real freedom feels like. Thank you, Carlo.
To the last, Romeo remains Carlo's friend and wishes only for a memory to flash in P's mind that will reunite them. With his death, Romeo is finally free from the Grand Covenant and the strings that bind him. The depth of the other puppets' faith in their king is fathomless. They're despondent and mourn his loss, which again suggests many puppets have awakened a human ego or at least feel emotion. What I find most interesting is that Giuseppe waits for us behind the opera house.
Did the king of puppets get you? Or some other ruffians?
In this, he means, did Romeo reach us with the truth? Did he turn us to his side and reveal Geppetto's treachery? I suspect Giuseppe watched the battle for two reasons. If Romeo proved too great an obstacle and threatened P's destruction, Geppetto would have intervened simply out of a regard for the P organ, not from sympathy towards P. Second, if Romeo had turned P against Geppetto, then the workshop genius would have unleashed the nameless puppet on both of them. Later, in the Grand Exhibition, where alchemists have been curing citizens of stone disease, P confronts Simon. The leader of the alchemists is egotistical, but he's also driven by curiosity in Geppetto's masterpiece. He invites P to the Isle of Alchemists to witness the awakening of the god that was torn apart. It's a challenge, but one Manus wishes to have on level terms. He gifts P the key to the Saintess of Mercy statue, the statue created by Camille Geppetto that ennobles puppets and cloaks them in divine protection. Simon also gathers the last piece he needs for the Arch-Abbey ritual, the stolen arm of God. They thought that if they followed you, Geppetto's puppet, they'd find the relic he stole, and that hunch was right. The relic has been returned to our sacred place. Now, the stage is set. The doors will open. The Black Rabbit Brotherhood, the ex-stalker leaders of the Malum district, have for a long time been working for the alchemists. After P kills their eldest brother, they swear vengeance against the puppet. They, alongside the Red Fox and Black Cat, attack Hotel Krat and kidnap Geppetto. The Krat Disaster has also released an enormous amount of ergo that activates the minds of Crowd beneath the city. As mentioned, Crowd absorbs ergo. It grows with insatiable hunger. Massive crystalline structures erupt from the earth and further ruin Krat. P eventually reaches the Isle of Alchemists, and on its shore we witness again the strange power of ergo. As the wind whips, it shimmers with memories and feelings from different times. Strong moments from Carlo's past flash as we walk by. When Geppetto abandons him, when he and Romeo become friends, their graduation ceremony, and finally, Carlo's death. The end of this dialogue, which appears only after having beaten Overture's DLC, hints at those past events and Leo Florence's heartfelt wish to share one last moment with Carlo.
Perhaps someday, if we can cross the bounds of time, we'll meet again. Farewell, dearest Carlo.
The story's climax plays out within Arch-Abbey. Here, Simon's gathered most of Krat's ergo to sustain the arm of God and fuel his transcendence. He's locked Geppetto near the summit. Here, we also learn the fate of two other characters. First, Sophia Monad's gruesome torture suffered by the alchemists is revealed. Ergo exposure and elixir injections have dissolved her body and turned her insides out into a web of blue-stained viscera. Butterflies surround her, symbols of Sophia's urgent desire to end her own life. If we choose to free her from this painful existence, Sophia's ergo crystallizes and is gathered within the P organ, her essence preserved. This is a final transformation within the puppet that turns P's hair blue-white, and is a critical decision for one of the game's endings. If we go against her wish and try to save her, Sophia dies regardless as we leave the room. Deep within the Abbey, locked inside a secret Trinity room, lies the weakened puppet remains of Arlecchino, the blood artist. It's likely that the alchemists recovered the puppet's body from the Rose estate shortly after his defeat. Arlecchino was, after all, initially sent to the Isle for study before he escaped the Archon fleet, and even in a mangled pile of metal, he still possesses an awakened ego, a mystery the Order's curiosity can't resist. But they learn from past mistakes and keep Arlecchino imprisoned within a broken puppet body. He retains his psychopathic tendencies, and denied the means to physically scar Krat, Arlecchino opts for mental torment.
She has so much power. As It's not like she'll miss just a little. So, I've simply been sharing. Why bother? Well, I was bored. Is there any more human motivation in all the world?
He hijacks some of the ergo wavelength power that emanates from Sophia to call people across the city and challenge them in macabre games. Arlecchino becomes the king of riddles. After completing the Overture DLC, if you confront him dressed as the legendary Stalker, unique dialogue plays in which Arlecchino explains the past and his current predicament.
That reminds me. The uninvited guest back then. It was you. How could I fail to recognize you? I hope you understand, my friend. You see, I lost a lot back then.
Finally, P confronts Simon Manus at the summit of Archabbey. Such tremendous ergo absorption mutates the man's body with blue, cancerous growth. In the first stage of his fight, Simon is without his left arm, a call to the fallen angel's left arm of God. Halfway through the battle, Manus reveals his full form. Just as with the anguished guardian of the ruins, Simon reaches out to a higher being from a different dimension, and once touched, is suffused with magic. Whether it's the energy of the angel or another god entirely isn't certain, but the grasping hands and arm motifs connect it to the arm relic. Perhaps this is how the arm of God manifests. An entity emerges from Simon's ergo-radiated body, the god awakened. From Simon Manus's confession, we hear this. Once the door is open, it can't be closed. For humankind, I, Simon, gave up being human and decided to walk the path of immortality and the truth. My body will be broken and reformed as the god that was torn apart. So, this creature that grows from his bulk is the angel of ancient Krat, and if it weren't for P's intervention, it would have completed its whole transformation, no longer torn.
The Blue Fairy, Sophia, decides the winner. Truly, I envy you. The puppet, my Sophia, keeps turning back time to save.
Again, in Simon's defeat, we hear of Sophia's incredible power, that her protection of Geppetto's puppet was enough to resist even Manus and the arm of God. All that's left is for P to face his creator. Giuseppe awaits at the bottom of the abbey. There are 3 possible endings to the Krat Disaster and P's tragic tale. Each depends on actions taken by the puppet throughout its journey. Each carry with them a profound message, and all culminate in the final confrontation between Geppetto and his artificial son. With the arm of God, Carlo's preserved body, and immense ergo stores, Giuseppe can bring his son back to life. P has sufficiently tempered the P organ, filled it with enough ergo to stabilize the nameless puppet's frame, and fuel the ritual for Carlo's revival.
If you give me your heart, all these trials and tribulations will be over. You have been a brilliant and a good boy. As your reward, I shall turn you into a real boy.
But by giving up his heart, the puppet will die. A decision must be made. The first ending is achieved if P remains true to the Grand Covenant, if he retains a puppet's inability to lie, inability to change. Again, deception is a uniquely human activity in the game, and to act the part of a human slowly awakens a puppet's ego. Without encountering and gathering sufficient humanity, P's persona remains unchanged. The ergo lies dormant. To comply sees the P organ forcefully ripped from his body. From P's death, Carlo is reborn. Giuseppe never cared for the puppet. It was simply a means to an end. In this ending, Geppetto's given a second chance with his son to undo the cold-hearted abandonment he made Carlo feel in life after the loss of Camille. But is this version of Carlo truly human, independent, willful? Or as half puppet, half human, is he still bound to obey his creator? An answer is perhaps found in what follows. The pair return to Hotel Krat, wherein Geppetto orders Carlo to slaughter all those humans who may know of his culpability in the city's fall. Carlo appeases his father, and the people who once helped P on his journey are replaced by puppet counterparts. This illustrates the true madness of Geppetto and his desire for complete control, a twisted fate in which all live happily ever after, in a story written by Giuseppe. In the second ending, P gains enough humanity and agency to have a will of his own. P gives pause at Giuseppe's request to forfeit his heart. The puppet demonstrates the human quality of freedom in choice and denies his creator. Geppetto then uses a marionette device whose ergofilaments control the nameless puppet to take the P organ by force. This is the first time we actually see what's happened to Carlo and how the young man's corpse has become a unique blend of cables and muscle. We also see woven into Giuseppe's arm the same puppeteering device used by Marchiona in the past. Either the pair, master and apprentice, developed it while she was still a member of the workshop, or he borrowed from her designs. The two puppets engage one another in combat, but the nameless puppet's strength and rage proves too great. It strikes at P's heart, the P organ that houses Carlo's memories, soul, essence. Astonished by the puppet's willingness to destroy what Geppetto sees as his son, he's moved to action and intercepts the blow.
Were you going to destroy Carlo's heart?
He doesn't care for P, only what's left of his son. He curses the puppet for exposing his son's vulnerable heart.
You're just a useless puppet.
In the third ending, P must have awakened an ego through humanity, but he must also have chosen to grant Sophia Monad peace. This is an act of sympathy, something so essentially human, more so even than deception. Through sympathy for Sophia, P transcends his artificial mechanisms and becomes something else entirely. The fight plays out the same, but when Geppetto sacrifices himself, he sees P shed an actual tear, something impossible for a puppet. Realization dawns. His son resides not within the nameless puppet, not within the P organ, but is manifest in P.
I'm sorry.
After the fight, P performs another human act, that of sacrifice. He burns most of the ergo in his body to empower a puppet of Sophia Monad. Through this, she's given new life. Though this drains him significantly, we see P's face twitch slightly, which suggests he survives the ordeal. Following this third ending, the rise of P, we receive two letters in Hotel Krat. The first, left by Sophia, it acknowledges that ergo truly is the key to immortality, at least in one form. Human essence can manifest in inorganic material. Thank you for giving me a new life. The fact that an ergo puppet can have a second life and become another kind of human requires more time for people to find out about. The second letter, left by Philippus Paracelsus, reads simply, "It's amazing seeing a new brother being born. I hope to meet you again sometime on the eternal line of time." Paracelsus has himself transcended humanity and achieved immortality. He welcomes P as a new brother. Through the puppet's evolution, P's been reborn as another immortal being. This coincides with the post-credits scene, foreshadowing Paracelsus' work and the purpose behind his secretive organization. The alchemist's experiment, the Krat Disaster, the petrification disease, all was orchestrated from the shadows by Paracelsus. The city was an experiment to determine if transcendence could be achieved through another method, one presumably different from that Paracelsus himself used. His organization continues to scour the world for fairy tales and mystical legends. Within each, there lies the potential for the immortal. The scene gives a final teaser that Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz and her ruby slippers are the next target of interest. Thanks so much for watching and listening to this video on the complete lore of Lies of P and Overture. Let me know your thoughts on the Alchemists, on Geppetto, and which characters or stories from Krat you'd like to learn more about in the comments below. And if you're a fan of lore and storytelling, be sure to subscribe to the channel, check out the podcast where content is uploaded frequently. I want to thank my amazing supporters over on Patreon who make all of this possible, and I couldn't do without their fantastic support. If you'd like to become a lore luminary for access to me, a great community, written scripts, and early video drops, head to patreon.com/thelorebrarians to learn more. Until next time, go forth and explore the lore.